This is the Self-Employed Mum podcast, the raw, honest truths of what it takes to be a mum and an entrepreneur. Running a business while raising small humans is an entirely different ballgame, and if you, like me, are in the thick of it right now, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Rhiannon Loudon, mom of two, proud entrepreneur, and CEO of two small businesses. And my guests, women who are juggling all the plates, building businesses while raising the next generation. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to like, follow, and spread the word to help keep this podcast going. Now on to today's episode. Welcome back to the Self-Employed Mum podcast. It has been a while. Thanks for sticking with me on this journey. I'm very aware that I have not been as consistent as planned with the podcast. And I think this is a perfect example of how life happens when you're busy making plans. Sometimes things get busy, sometimes unforeseen things come up in life. And I think both have definitely been true. But in the interest of being totally open and honest, because I believe so strongly in talking not only about the highlights of running a business, but about the tough stuff too, I wanted to share some perspective today on why there haven't been podcast episodes for a good few weeks now, and why I took a little break from recording and putting these out into the world. Many of you follow along with my journey over on Instagram, so you will know already that we have had some concerns about my youngest daughter, Poppy's health for quite some time now. Pretty much since her first birthday, so she's now 2.5. We started to notice that things were slowing down developmentally, and since last spring, recording this now in May of 2024. So since spring of 2023, we have been on a journey to figure out what is going on with our little Poppy. And that all culminated last month in April when we got a diagnosis. For anyone else that has been through this process, they will know all too well how much you have to fight to get a diagnosis, how much you have to fight for every appointment and assessment and to be seen and to be heard. And I think, at the beginning of this, I had that mother's instinct that something really wasn't right. And so many of the people around me and around Poppy kept telling us that, she could just be taking her time, and every child does things on their own time, and she has a big sister that speaks for her, and all of those cliches that we hear again and again. And obviously those were all well-meaning people with good intentions who didn't want us to worry if we didn't have to. But unfortunately, it turns out that our worries were pretty accurate, because Poppy has a rare genetic disorder called Rett syndrome, which affects 1 in 10 to 15,000 girls worldwide. So it is extremely rare. And what it means is that virtually every area of Poppy's life is affected in a big way. It means that she will likely remain nonverbal. It means that she could lose a lot of the abilities that she currently has, including her ability to walk. She has already lost a lot of functional use of her hand, so fine motor skills are an issue for her, and there's a whole host of other problems that come along with Rett syndrome. Most children that have Rett syndrome also end up having seizures. A lot of them have issues with scoliosis, with breathing, with feeding. The list goes on and on. It's essentially like having a disability in every major area of your development. And it has been a lot to wrap our heads around, to come to terms with. We're still very much in the grieving process about it all. And obviously the kids and family come first here. But it has been extremely difficult to navigate having a business, two businesses, at the same time as dealing with all of this grief and stress and worry, and the physical aspects of it as well. There have been weeks where we have had 4 different medical appointments for Poppy. So it just is a lot to juggle. And Had I been in a traditional job, I probably would have taken some sort of a leave of absence, whether that was a mental health leave or, a medical leave, or I don't know what kind of leave or time would be available to me. But when you're self-employed, that is not an option. I can't just disappear for a few weeks. There's nobody to cover for me while I'm gone. So I think when these big things in life happen, you really have to make a decision about what that means for your business moving forward, what you can sort of handle short term, and also looking ahead at, a more uncertain future, longer term, and how do you navigate things, and having to figure that out while you're going through all of these other changes as well. It just feels like everything got, thrown taken out from under me, if you will, like a total loss of control, which I think is something that's really hard to accept. That these are things that are out with my control, and it really has felt over the last few months just like firefighting as we try to figure out not only what's going on with Poppy, but what that's going to mean for us, what that's going to mean for me as her mum, and as the person with the flexible schedule. A lot of that does sort of fall on me by default to figure it out. So I did want to share that with all of you to let you know what has been going on behind the scenes, but also as the context for this episode, which is all about working through the really hard times, and how do you keep going when you're dealing with grief, stress, trauma, any number of these things in your day-to-day life. How do you keep going as a self-employed small business owner? And I actually wrote an article. I've started a Substack account to share sort of more insights about running a business. I think I was really missing writing. A lot of you will know I actually come from a journalism background. My degree is in rhetoric and communications with a major in journalism. And coming from sort of that background, writing was a big part of my sort of uni life and early career life. And it's really always been a part of my life. And I fell away from it for a few years, other than writing content for my business. And I've kind of gotten back into it since all of this stuff has been going on with Poppy, as it's been really therapeutic for me. So I did actually set up a Substack account to sort of chronicle some of this and some of what I'm going through. And I wrote a little piece about working through the hard times back at the start of March, and realized actually this would be great subject matter for the podcast. And so here we are. So, what do you actually do when things get tough and you have to keep things going with your business? Part of this is going to depend on how busy you are at the time that all this stuff is going on in your life. So, when things really sort of came to a head with Poppy, it was sort of just before my busiest time of year was going to start. Which meant that I did have a little bit more flexibility in my calendar than I do in my sort of busiest season. And that was great, because if I did have appointments and things, it was easier to fit them in. It meant that if I was having a particularly tough morning, or I was really struggling to focus, I had time to just go to the gym or take the dog for a walk, and I didn't have every hour of every day scheduled. But likewise, had things come to a head right now going into June, which is my busiest time of year, that would have been a lot more difficult to navigate. So if there is a way for you to build more flexibility into your schedule, if your work isn't booked too far in advance, maybe you can allow yourself a little bit more downtime in your schedule. Maybe you don't fill every appointment slot. Leave some flexibility in there so that you can take a morning off or a day off, or fit in an appointment, or even just a heart to heart with a friend when you really need it. I say that knowing that that is not going to be possible for everyone. And typically, when things do get tough, it does happen at the worst time. But if there is any way to build some flexibility into your schedule at that time, that will make a huge difference in getting through the tough times. The other thing that I'll say on that is, even now that, I think it would be silly to suggest that I'm just going to, get over this and move on. But now that we've maybe gotten through that initial shock, and are working through the acceptance kind of phase of grief, I am still adjusting my calendar so that there is downtime in there. I used to fill every possible spot, and my weeks would be jam packed. And admittedly, some weeks still are. June is particularly busy in my calendar. But for example, I have blocked out one day every week, one work day every week as a catch up day. And what that means is if I have had to run to a medical appointment with Poppy, or if I have needed some time just for me, some extra time at the gym, or, whatever it may be, I can fit that into my schedule. And it also means that if I have a particularly tough day, I can swap things out. So maybe I had planned to do a whole bunch of editing on a Tuesday, but I wake up on Tuesday and I'm feeling really low and I just don't have it in me. Well, I had Friday scheduled as a catch up day, so I can swap things about, take Tuesday off, and use that time on Friday to catch up. So if you have the capability to do that, and it doesn't need to be a full day, even if it was a half a day or a couple of hours, if you can just block out that time in your calendar so that if you need it, it's there. And if not, it's a couple of free hours for you to do with what you like. And I mean, who could not do with a couple of free hours? My next tip is that if you are struggling to focus, give yourself a break. So, focus is something that I struggle a lot with. I think this might be a bit of a neurodiversity thing, which is another thing that I'm exploring at the moment. However, my focus is worse than ever with everything that's been going on in my life. And I think the first thing to say here is to give yourself some grace. Of course, you are going to struggle to focus on work or anything really structured when you have challenging things going on in your personal life. So, it's totally normal to feel that way. And it doesn't mean that you're being lazy or you're not trying hard enough or you're not working hard enough. It simply means that you're going through a lot and work is going to be a challenge to kind of maintain your focus. What has been working for me is blocking things out in shorter periods of time. So I find that if I just say I have the whole day to work on somebody's photo gallery, for example, and I just go, right, so I'm going to have 6 or 7 hours to do this. I end up procrastinating and wasting time, and I end up filling the whole 6 or 7 hours when realistically I could have gotten that done in 3. So what I'm finding is blocking out shorter periods of time, taking breaks in between. So on a Wednesday morning now, I go to the gym, I give myself some time to just sit in the sauna, get a nice long shower, and I don't actually start my workday until 11 o'clock instead of starting first thing in the morning. That means I only have 4 hours before my oldest daughter gets home from school, 4 or 5 hours instead of 7. And even within that, I am trying to block that out into smaller chunks of time. So I might set aside 2 hours to write a blog post and do some content for the week, and then half an hour for a walk with the dog, and then an additional 2 hours to work on that editing project. So if you can manage a bit of time blocking or give yourself breaks in between, whether that's going out for a walk or sitting down with a cup of coffee or letting yourself read a chapter of your book, breaking up your day makes a big difference in terms of productivity and focus, especially when there's other stuff going on in your life. And it really is factoring in a bit of time for self-care. And I feel, I've always felt almost a little bit guilty taking time for self-care during the week. But the reality of the situation is that I need to do that in order to be productive. And it actually makes me a better business owner, and it makes me more efficient and to get more done when I do take time out to go to the gym or go for a walk or sit down with a cup of coffee, instead of just trying to power through. My third tip is find yourself an Emily. For those of you who don't know, I have a fabulous virtual assistant who has been helping me since I was preparing to go on mat leave for the second time. Emily is an amazing graphic designer and illustrator, and that is actually the focus of her work. She doesn't take on VA clients anymore, but she has very generously agreed to stay on and help me. And so I have Emily 5 hours a week, which makes a huge difference for me in terms of staying on top of my admin. She helps keep me organized. I do not have an organized brain, and she does. So she's really good at helping me stay on track, being accountable, using Asana to stay on top of projects and set deadlines and make sure that things aren't being forgotten. If you have the capability and the scope to hire a virtual assistant or anybody who can help with the parts of your business that you're struggling to stay on top of or that you don't enjoy doing, that will make a huge difference, because it means that when you have a particularly tough day or week, things are not just falling to the wayside. It means that somebody else is staying on top of it and is taking care of those tasks for you. And so then, if you do need that time, you don't feel worried about the fate of your business because you know it's being looked after. If you already have somebody doing bits and pieces for you, maybe it's possible to add on some more hours with them or restructure the things that they're helping you with. And if you don't have somebody helping you out yet, it is so worth chatting with someone. Most VAs are really flexible. They will have different options for you if you only need a couple of hours a week, or if you need more than that. And it means that you're able to, well, it's great because you're supporting another small business. In my case, another female-led small business, which is obviously really important to me. And it means that you don't have to worry about sort of hiring an employee. It's all done on a freelance basis. You can try it for a while and see how it works. But honestly, Emily has been a godsend to me, and I really would not have made it through these last 6 months without her helping me stay on top of things and filling in for me when I have had particularly tough times. My next tip is to remember that you don't have to do everything all at once. And if ever there was a good time to ease your foot off the gas, now would be it. I'm going to sound like a huge hypocrite for saying this out loud because it's only very recently that I've found a way to accept this. I have so many big ideas in my head for this business, and so many big things that I want to do and try and incorporate into my work. And it feels really hard to take my foot off the gas and just coast for a little while. That doesn't come naturally to me. I'm quite an ambitious person. I'm quite a spontaneous person. When I get excited about an idea, I do want to roll with it. But I really have had to stop and think, what is realistic for me to handle right now? If I continue to work towards all of these new things at a time when things are a little bit, well, not a little bit, a lot bit challenging in my personal life, what will happen? Will I end up getting burnt out or overwhelmed, or will I just do a, for lack of a better term, a half-assed job of the new projects because I just don't have the time and energy to put into them that I would if things were a little bit more even keeled at home, shall we say? And I think I have come to the conclusion that actually you can't have all of the burners on high at once. It's this idea that, you have different elements on the oven, and yes, they all have the capability of going from 0 to 9 or whatever your your hob allows. But you can't have them all up at 9 at the same time. It would be chaos. It would be impossible to stay on top of things and stop one thing from burning while the other thing is going. And I think that visualization has really helped me realize that I cannot be there advocating and pushing and researching for my daughter to get all of the treatments that she needs and deserves at the same time as maintaining my existing client workload and trying to build up all of these new aspects of the business. It is just too much at once. And I think for me, first of all, is admitting that out loud and figuring out what my priorities need to be at this time. And on the other side of that, not making myself feel bad about it, not comparing myself with other people who don't have this going on in their personal life and are able to just go for it, who are doing all of these exciting things because they do have the time and energy. And also telling myself that just because I'm not able to do these things now, it doesn't mean that I won't be able to do them in the future. It just means that I can't do everything at once. And I think this is the whole mantra around having it all when you have young children and a business and everything. Yes, you can have it all, but not all at once. And my last piece of advice on navigating work when you're going through big stuff in your personal life is to try and take things one step at a time. when you look at a really busy work week or a busy work month and you're having a tough day and you think, oh my God, how am I going to get through all of this week or this month? It all feels really overwhelming and like this big weight on your shoulders that you're never going to be able to shrug off. But if you look simply at what you have to do that morning or that day, if you break it down into smaller to-do lists, smaller manageable to-do lists that are actually achievable to get done in the one day or the one afternoon, if you can break all of that down, that will make a massive difference in sort of keeping off those feelings of overwhelm. And it's easier said than done, but I have definitely found that breaking my work into days and weeks instead of looking at the month ahead and panicking about how I'm going to be up and out the door with a smile on my face all of those days. That's really, really helped me to make it feel more manageable. So if you are able to cut your to-do list down a bit, just give yourself one or two things to focus on each day so that it is achievable and so that you can celebrate that as a win instead of a crazy to-do list that keeps getting more and more added on to it and you always feel like you're chasing your tail, which is not a nice way to feel, especially when you feel like all these other aspects of your life are out of control. And I think by breaking things down into smaller chunks like that, it just makes it feel like you can handle it. And you can handle it, and you are handling it. And I think, you know, not necessarily a separate tip, but a bit of perspective here. It's so easy to beat yourself up for feeling like you're not doing enough or you're not doing as much as you normally do, or you've had to turn down a project you're excited about. I'm not going to lie and say it doesn't feel tough to do those things. It's hard to win work in, and it's especially hard when you have to turn it down or when an opportunity comes up that you're really excited about, but you really know that you can't fit it into your schedule. Trust your gut, pick and choose what is most important to you. And remember that just because you aren't doing it now, it doesn't mean that you can't do it in the future. So I hope that there were some useful tips and bits of advice in there, and at the very least, some sort of honest perspective on how I've been navigating everything that's going on over here and still managing to keep both businesses afloat. Hopefully now that will be the end of this inconsistent run of the podcast. I have 3 episodes ready to share with you. I've got another little solo episode on planning for the summer to help anybody who's going to be navigating work and childcare over the summer. Just some tips and advice on how to plan and prepare yourself for that. I have an amazing interview with Nicole HR, who is a mindfulness practitioner. She shares her top tips for self-care and for sort of taking care of you and taking time for mindfulness and how that can make a massive difference in your sort of business journey. And I also have a really interesting interview with Susie on the subject of matrescence. And for those who don't know, matrescence is the journey into motherhood. And we talk not only about going from pre-children to children, but we also talk about the evolution of that journey and how it changes over time, how it changes when your baby goes from newborn to a toddler stage, how it changes when you're going back to work, and all of the sort of new research and information that is coming out, and how that basically shows that we need more support, need to go a little bit easier on ourselves, and give some understanding onto why things feel that bit more challenging after kids. So that is all coming up in June for you. Lots of content that's really relevant when we're thinking ahead to the summer, and I cannot wait to share it with you.